Look, I think I've seen enough kung fu movies to know what this is about. I gotta train the body before I can do the cool shit, right? I told you, I'm not teaching you sound magic. Why the fuck not? How should I put this? See, sound magic is kind of like pregnancy. What? Follow me here. I can teach you all the technical aspects of how it's done, the motions, the breathing, everything. But if you are biologically incapable of doing it, then all that knowledge means jack shit. So, you're saying that you have a vagina and I don't? Go fight a tiger or some shit! What? You heard me! Fight a goddamn tiger! It might take a while to find one. Find some commentary material for you to yell at. That should get the tigers to notice you. Probably want to eat you. How the fuck am I supposed to find commentary material in the jungle?
Hi. Oh, come on, don't play dumb, Dad.
Dad, what? Oh. Oh, dear God.
Yep, it's me, Timmy. I used to be a tiefling. How the fuck do you pronounce that? Tiefling? Tiefling. I don't fucking know.
Yes, I'm aware. What are you doing here, of all places? How did you get here, of all places?
Well, after I became fully sentient, I decided to do the thing that you can do.
Decided?
Yep.
You just decided?
Mm-hmm. I didn't stutter.
That's not how that works!
Too bad. I'm gonna go find a church to blow up. SpaghettiOs!
What have I done? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Young Defiant. Timmy gave me this video. It's a review of God of War by a guy called Young Defiant. I was originally going to cover the video before this, but I think this is much more relevant, and you'll likely understand why as I get into the video, so let me not waste any more of your time.
So after playing and finishing God of War, I can definitely say Young Defiant, aka the king of gaming, the king of YouTube, the realest gamer on the internet, the one who's better than you in every way, was right yet again. God of War sucks, the reviews are lies, Sony paid off reviewers, and overall this game is not worth playing whatsoever.
I mean, I guess I get to bring this up right off the bat. The only reason I'm not saving this for my final thoughts is because this concept is going to be very important throughout the video. A lot of things that you say in this review were stated verbatim in the video I was originally going to cover, which conveniently enough has been deleted before I actually saved that video. I just wasn't quick enough on the draw on that one, fair dues. However, link will be in the description to that video anyway, since it shows that the video was, in fact, removed by the user, indicating this is something that, for one reason or another, you don't want people to see. Here's one particular thing that you say in that video that's going to be relevant right here. In that video, you say that your response to someone asking how you can say a game is bad without playing it is to ask how they can say a game is great without playing it, and I do want to address that. See, you're not wrong on that front. People can't say that a game is great without playing it. Full disclosure on this one as well, I don't own a PS4. I haven't played the game, and there's going to be a few points that I can't fully address because of this, and I'm fully aware of that. However, I can talk about most of his points through simple viewership of gameplay footage and story elements of the game, and there may be points where I use someone else's opinion to subsidize my own, and I will explain why it's relevant when it happens. But about that whole paid reviewer thing. So, what he's saying about reviewers getting paid off to give better scores to games absolutely happens, because a lot of consumers only look at the numerical score instead of looking at the content of the review and what the person actually says about the game. And even then, you shouldn't be getting your opinion from one outlet, but instead examining multiple outlets and forming your own opinion on whether or not something is worth your time based on what they say. If a reviewer gives a game a 10 and says that they loved open world gameplay, but you don't want open world gameplay, then your opinion does not line up with the reviewers, so don't automatically assume you're going to like a game just because reviewers are giving it 10 out of 10. However, I'm also willing to do that with your review, though. That's why we're here.
And you Sony fanboys are just going to have to accept that. You guys know nothing about good games. You're going to have to accept that. And I know it's hard to accept. The truth hurts, which is why you become emotional and upset when people talk bad about a game you like, because you're in denial. You have terrible taste. And when someone like me brings that terrible taste to light, you don't like that. You don't want to accept reality. But too bad, because I'm going to keep destroying bad games along with destroying you casual fake gamers with terrible taste, such as you people who like and play bad games.
Fantastic. I don't get an air of superiority to this at all. Actually, this whole thing seems vaguely familiar for some reason. Whatever, it's probably nothing. This whole elite gamer mindset, though, does communicate what kind of perspective you bring to this review, which is important when examining if your viewpoint is going to be one I can trust. I have to consider if I fall into this more elite mindset when listening to what you say, although, to be honest, hardcore gamer means a lot of things, so I'll get into places where it's more relevant later.
And I mean, to show you how bad this game is, I went to a midnight release to buy this game, and it was only 3 people in line, including me. So me and 2 other people. There is just absolutely no hype surrounding this game. No one cares about it. No one's talking about it. No one wants it. The game is definitely, without a doubt, going to flop. You know, I'm going to be bringing factual evidence in this video, in this review, on why this game is horrible and why only casuals and fake gamers with bad taste enjoy it.
So, let me just start off with the most obvious problem with this statement. Whether a game has excitement surrounding it or not has nothing to do with its quality. I mean, there was pretty much no hype for Panzer Dragoon Saga when it was launched, and you're not gonna catch me dead saying that the game was shit. Of course, then there's whether or not it is true that no one cares about the game. It's not. For one, anecdotal evidence of your midnight release experience is not proper evidence of whether or not the game was anticipated. And instead of just saying that, I'm going to present some questions that show that there could be other reasons why people weren't showing up as much. The game released on a Friday, for one, so that would be Friday morning, which means people with work or school would be more likely to pick up their copies later. How much competition is in the area? If there's lots of game stores around you doing midnight releases, then your store could be relatively empty, while other stores that have more of God of War's audience may be full. How many people interested in games live in your area? I did pre-orders at a Blockbuster in my area years ago, and since there was a very low population of gamers in my town, it was no surprise that even a hype title like Grand Theft Auto 4 didn't exactly have people lining up out of the door to pick it up. Do those in your area share your opinion on games? If they think like you do, and as previously mentioned, already dismissed God of War as trash, then of course they weren't going to be as likely to pick it up. And here's the most important question of all. How does this prove anything when digital sales exist? Link in the description to an article about how God of War was the #1 selling PSN game in the US in April of 2018, which is notable in the fact that it was only out for like 10 days of that month. This is not anecdotal evidence of my local area being interested in the game or not picking up a physical copy. This is hard evidence, my friend, of something that proves that a lack of physical purchases does not mean that no one cares about the game. And I feel like I already know the response to this. It's just casual gamers and fake gamers, right? Well, first of all, if they're the only people talking about it, what the fuck are you doing right now? And second of all, you can call anyone casual or fake that disagrees with your opinion, but you need evidence to back that up. Let's see if you have any.
So let's start off with the story. Let's start off with the overall change to the series. First, this is not God of War at all. This is not a God of War game. They should have named it something else because it's not God of War in the slightest. It's not. It's a Last of Us clone. It's the Last of Us Kratos edition. That's all it is. They took the Last of Us and they just put God of War a skin over it, basically. This is The Last of Us with a God of War skin. I mean, it's the same thing. Everything about this game just screams The Last of Us. And The Last of Us is a trash game as well. So you're copying off of another trash game. It's ridiculous. You have Kratos and his son, just like you had Joel and Ellie. It's the same game. Copy and paste The Last of Us. You know, Joel and Ellie, they travel on this journey together and then they become closer and they bond. Same thing happens in this game. You know, it's so dumb. It's pathetic.
It's the same game because you have a companion character that is your child. Okay, by that logic, The Last of Us is just a BioShock Infinite clone, and we can pretty much trace this back to some fucking obscure title on the Atari if we really fucking wanted to. Yeah, for this to be called a clone, I'm going to need something other than companion AI, since that could be said about a ton of games. They have different settings, with one in Norse mythological Midgard and the other in an aftermath of a zombie apocalypse. Different gameplay themes in the form of a stealth and survival horror game versus a hack-and-slash action game. I don't recall Ellie actually being related to Joel. For fuck's sake, Kratos and Atreus start the game together. Joel and Ellie don't. It takes like at least an hour for them to start working together at all. And although you could probably dismiss any one thing I said as a small change, other than the completely different genres, I've gotten on to people for splitting up pieces of evidence before, and I'll say this much. Unless you can prove that these differences do not exist, it does nothing to weaken the point by any means short of manipulation.
Not only that, this game rips off many other games as well, such as Dark Souls, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted, so on and so forth. This game is a rip-off of so many games.
If it's ripping off elements from tons of other games, doesn't that contradict what you were saying about it being a clone of The Last of Us? In order to be a clone, the majority of the game has to lift large swaths from the original, not just have surface-level similarity in the story to it. I also like how you don't elaborate on how it's ripping off these games, probably because you realize it's just as nebulous a comment as calling it a Last of Us clone, and saying that in so many different directions breaks your narrative completely for anyone who isn't blindly following you. Not that you didn't break your narrative already.
So many things. Not only does it rip off a bunch of games, but it rips off a bunch of movies. Like, this game is a rip off of Thor. They were like, okay, let's, you know, we saw the Avengers or whatever, and we see, you know, the whole Thor storyline. Let's just rip that off entirely. There is not an inch of creativity or originality to be found anywhere in this game.
What? Okay. No, now you're stepping in the wrong territory. What the fuck does Kratos' story in this game have to do with Marvel's Thor at all? Thor doesn't even have a kid in the comics, let alone in the Avengers. The only thing that this has to do with Marvel's Thor is that they're both based on... Oh. Well, still fuck you! These are radically different depictions of the Norse gods! I'm not sure if you were paying attention in the slightest in this game, but the giants are the good guys, and Thor is a massive dick. Hell, no spoilers for the end of the game here, but Loki's damn sure not the same figure from Marvel's version. And if the fact that they used Norse mythology at all makes it a ripoff of the Avengers, Marvel ripped off the mythology. Please tell me that this is the dumbest point you make.
At all. I mean, I've never seen one game rip off so many games and do it worse than all those other games. You know, all these Sony games are the same. Play one, you've played them all. Nothing but cinematic walking simulators with dull gameplay, a bunch of cinematic set pieces, cutscenes, scripted events.
Oh, thank God you finally made a point that means something. Yes! The game does have cinematic cutscenes and scripting events, although the dull gameplay is certainly something that would be considered subjective, and without an explanation on what makes it dull, I can't really comment on that front. But yes, cinematics tend to be at the forefront in a lot of first-party Sony titles. I mean, sure, you listed titles on your Best of 2017 list that also had a high ratio of cutscenes to gameplay, like Wolfenstein 2 and Yakuza 0. But there must be something about those games that felt less cinematic to you. So this tells me that I might find God of War 2 cinematic if I felt that Wolfenstein 2 and Yakuza 0 had a good balance.
Why do we continue to play the same game? These Sony games have no creativity. They're all the same thing. Copy and paste. Every Sony game is a Last of Us clone now. It's ridiculous. A bunch of boring walking.
Wow. I didn't know that Killzone Shadowfall, Knack, Infamous Second Son, Entwined, Hanakumi, Counter Spy, Infamous First Light, Drive Club, Little Big Planet 3, Helldivers, Bloodborne, Drive Club Bikes, Fat Princess Adventures, Hardware Rivals, Alienation, Bound, Here They Lie, Gravity Rush 2, Horizon Zero Dawn, Drawn to Death, Everybody's Golf. Yeah, try telling me that's a Last of Us clone. Knack 2, Hob, Gran Turismo Sport, Hidden Agenda, Knowledge is Power, and The Inpatient are all clones of The Last of Us. To be fair, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, Beyond Two Souls, and The Last Guardian at least do more of what The Last of Us do than God of War does, but all those other titles do far less. So saying all of Sony's games are Last of Us clones is a bit ridiculous, yeah? Oh, and these are just the games published by Sony, and I didn't touch remasters or games not published by Sony that were exclusives, so don't even fucking try me.
I can't take it anymore. I honestly cannot take it anymore. The story in this game is cliche trash with no memorable characters or moments. This is bad writing and storytelling at its finest. Anyone who thinks this game has a good story clearly doesn't know what a good story is.
Well, sir, this is where your mindset comes into play. Yeah, you're a hardcore gamer, right? Therefore, the most important thing to you is going to be gameplay. So when I look at your review, and you say that the story's bad, I have to take that with a grain of salt. Especially when you seem to equate creativity with quality, which David Cage's writing proves factually inaccurate. No memorable characters? Mimir and Brock immediately come to mind for me, just from watching the cutscenes, mind you. And as for standout moments, Brock naming his beast a bird in fucking gratitude, and Mimir's asking Kratos to chop off his head stuck with me. The former for comedy and the latter due to the nature of the request and how it helped paint Thor in a negative light. Hell, the whole story depicting Thor as a villain, for that matter, was new for me, even with knowledge of actual Norse mythology behind me. Keep in mind, though, that I've seen shopkeepers that were affably abrasive and people who desired death to escape torture. So these things I noted are as memorable weren't things that I hadn't seen before. Just things that were executed well and given surroundings and writing that made them memorable.
Kratos is a horrible character. He always has been. He's one-dimensional with no depth. Oh, I'm mad all the time. Oh, I'm so cool because I'm mad. I've seen better characters in a low-budget porno.
See, you'd be right that Kratos has historically been a one-dimensional character that operates on his anger, although having played previous God of War games, I at least know the source of that anger to have enough context. This game, however, does attempt to add more complex elements to the character that you seem to have missed. As many people have noted before, and this is something that I agree with, some of the stuff Atreus says to him are things that he would have been killed for in past iterations of Kratos' character. But this Kratos seeks to teach Atreus instead. He doesn't even come across as angry most of the time, more so indifferent to the struggles of others. And that's an element that was always there in the character, but is being brought more to the forefront now that his responsibilities as a father are also being laid to bear. Is it the most complex character in the world? No, not really, considering the tendency towards indifference rather than anger, him softening throughout the campaign at the very least to Atreus, and the wrinkle of him refusing to tell Atreus his true identity. I'd say that he's got more dimensions than one at the very least, and he doesn't have to be the most complex character in the world in order to fit the role that the story needs.
I mean, come on. His son, one of the worst characters ever created. I mean, he starts off this little timid coward, and then that can't do anything, and then towards like the end of the game he gets edgy, and they try to make him, you know, corrupted and become really edgy. Then he goes back to being a timid coward. It's all over the place.
What are you even talking about? Okay, for one, he's not a coward at the beginning of the game. Are you forgetting about how he wants to go out on this journey at the very beginning of the game, and it's Kratos who tells him he isn't ready because of his physical weakness? And by becoming edgy, do you mean that he got angry once or twice? Like, seriously, I watched all the cutscenes and all the boss fights with extra gameplay thrown in. I have no idea what the hell you're even talking about.
And the side characters are bad as well. I mean, the story was so bad, I was desperately trying to skip cutscenes, which you can't in this game, by the way. I mean, the game is such a movie that you can't even skip cutscenes. Ridiculous. I mean, they want to spoon feed you, force feed you this cinematic movie that you just can't skip. It was driving me insane.
See, now we, again, have a legitimate complaint. Not being able to skip cutscenes can be very annoying. Like, for example, I watched all of this, so now if I want to play having seen all of these cutscenes, I know that at the very least on my first playthrough, I can't speak for other playthroughs, because I have a feeling you didn't play through the game a second time, I won't be able to skip the cutscenes, which will add 3 hours to my first playthrough on its own. Oh yeah, that's right. The cutscenes themselves are only 3 hours long, out of 18 estimated that the game would take to beat. Yeah, that's actually a pretty healthy ratio. I mean, still annoying that you can't skip them if you already know the story, but the fact remains.
It's a boring, poorly written story that made me fall asleep on several occasions. I did not care what was going on in the slightest. I don't think the game cared what was going on because the story is all over the place. It starts off one way, you're doing this, and you just get wrapped up in a whole bunch of random events that have nothing to do with anything. I mean, this game doesn't know what type of story it wants to tell.
That just sounds like a story that has roadblocks along the way, though. Hell, the only point where the purpose of the journey really changes, which I think is your complaint, but I'm not sure, is when they find out the mountain they've been trying to climb isn't the mountain they need to spread the ashes. But that's called a twist, and it's really fucking relevant to the ending. And if this is supposed to be about the story not being a strict point A to point B quest, well, very few stories are. Honestly, it sounds like you just wanted an excuse plot for the action instead of an actual story. And if that's the case, fine. But the fact that it had something more than that isn't a detraction for me. Sorry.
Does it want to tell a bonding situation between Kratos' son, or does it want to tell the story of the Norse gods? It doesn't know what it wants to do.
Wait, is it not allowed to do both? Can the two of them not bond while pursuing and learning about the Norse mythology? In fact, if you look at the story, if you look at the way the game is set up, Kratos needs information on this stuff sometimes that Atreus is the one who has. And at other points, interacting with the Norse mythos around them is how they progress to the place where they are to spread Atreus' mother's ashes. For fuck's sake, a story can have more than one facet to its direction, you chuckle fuck. Okay, so this is the dumbest thing you say in the whole video, right? It can't get dumber than this.
The gameplay is slow, sluggish, and an overall chore to play. When the game actually lets you play, it isn't throwing a cutscene or cinematic piece in your face. It's a boring, repetitive, and built for casuals who are bad at games type of situation going on here. Just repetitive hack and slash garbage that feels neither fun nor rewarding.
Well, you said it was sluggish and repetitive, so I guess I can see the repetitive part. It is a hack and slash action game after all, so if you don't want to press attack a lot, this probably isn't the game for you. Now, I can't say whether the game feels sluggish from watching things, but I can say how the game looks like it feels from watching gameplay. It definitely appears to have a slower cadence than some of the previous God of War titles, at the very least while wielding the Leviathan axe, which is going to be the majority of your gameplay, fair dues. I'll give you that much. But since you earlier compared it to Dark Souls, yeah, I get where you get Dark Souls from. I'd say the pace of the combat is more akin to that, based on looking at it. But I personally wouldn't call that sluggish, at least not for me. I enjoy Dark Souls, thank you very much. So I can't agree with you on that one, but repetitive? I mean, sure, most games do repeat their gameplay concepts throughout. That's kind of how the medium generally works. I could use some examples of what you're talking about to have a better expression of how this is any different from a good game repeating things versus this game being bad because it repeats gameplay.
I mean, all you got to do in this game is hold one button, and you can win. Hold one button over and over again, and that's all you have to do to win. There's no challenge to this game. There's no skill required to play this game. This game was, like I said, built from the ground up specifically for casuals that know nothing about good games, that suck at every game that they play. That's why they'll get on this game and be able to do good, because this game takes no skill.
Well, I'm not going to assume that you're wrong, having not played the game myself, but I can't help but ask, did you try selecting a higher difficulty? I mean, yeah, you can beat the game easily on lower difficulties. That's kind of why they're there. Why not play Give Me God of War if you're not being challenged? And look, I understand that you have no way to prove what difficulty you beat the game on. But if I say you can beat Devil May Cry 3 easily without telling someone a difficulty, I'm probably not talking about Dante Must Die. The higher difficulties are there for people who need more challenge. And to say that someone can beat the game with ease doesn't really say much for me. That comes across as a manipulative comment.
Man, the weapons, like I said, are horrible, do no damage. The axe is horrible. And then at the end of the game, towards the end of the game, you get his, signature dual blades, the Blades of Chaos, and those are horrible. They don't do anything. They're boring to use. They're not fun.
Okay, I can tell you're full of shit just from watching gameplay at any difficulty. Even throwing Leviathan Axe can take out some ranged specialist enemies, and the Blades of Athena add a lot to the arsenal. On top of having more range, faster attacks, and a slam attacks that the Leviathan Axe straight up doesn't have, the blades can also pull enemies close to you, giving you positioning capabilities that you previously did not have. And as for doing no damage, even if the damage these weapons dealt was minimal, would that not be something that made the game harder, thus nullifying your point about the game having no challenge?
And then you have to waste your time. The armor's a joke in this game, and you have to waste your time finding resources in this boring world just to be able to upgrade everything. Everything that you want to upgrade in this game is locked behind resources. We saw the same thing in Horizon Zero Dawn. You wanted to do this in Horizon Zero Dawn? Oh, you had to go find some resources. Wanted to craft a fast travel pack? You had to find resources. In this game, you want to do this? Find some resources in this boring open world. We're gonna make you. And let's talk about that. This open world is one of the worst open worlds I've ever seen in a game. It's so empty. This world is so empty and lifeless. Why would you bother making an open world? And it's not even open world. It's more like semi-open world. Like you can kind of go from here to here, but it's not really open world. But there's nothing to be found in these open world areas.
Oh, except for chests, lore items, the aforementioned resources, optional bosses in the form of Valkyries, and tons of other shit that even a cursory look at the gameplay footage will tell you is there. Kvasir's blood, you're fucking dumb.
It's boring. Only thing you're doing is going over here so you can find some boring resources to craft your, upgrade your stuff. You shouldn't have to, waste your time looking here, looking there just to find things to upgrade. You should be able to upgrade with just experience alone. You should be able to upgrade by just playing through the game. Why do I have to go here and go there to find some boring resources?
Okay, so I've been trying to avoid bringing up your best games of 2017 list up until this point. But right here and right now, I'm gonna use every single fucking game on that list to prove what I've been saving for my final thoughts. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Crash 3 has upgrades that are based solely on beating the bosses, but the other two games have no character ability upgrades whatsoever. This is the outlier in this regard in terms of your list. Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, requires you to find upgrade kits, which are resources for upgrading your weapons, and contraptions, tech that gives you new abilities that need to be found. Yeah, they have an upgrade system that solely involves just playing through combat sections, but they still have major upgrades that require exploration over firefighting. Yakuza 0. Equipment search. That's all I need to say. You love this game so much, you should know what I'm talking about. Also, even the achievement points can be spent upgrading exploration capabilities. Nier Automata. Chips, my dude! Chips are progression that involve enemy drops, much like many of your resources in God of War do. Persona 5. Oh, I don't even need to have watched Persona 5 gameplay for this one. I just need to have played literally any game in this series. Social Links requires exploration of the world and non-combat interactions with your allies. Most of the game is non-combat. This ties into the point of the whole video. See, like I said near the beginning, people should not take a review as a number at face value and just leave it at that. They should examine what the person is saying, look for multiple opinions, and be sure to keep in mind if someone has opinions that line up with the way that you look at games. And in doing that with your review, I found nothing but confirmation bias. See, Mr. Defiant, you said it yourself. You said this game was going to suck before you ever touched the thing. I found multiple problems with what you were saying from simply watching the game being played, including some that I didn't even fucking cover in this video, and that told me that you had already made up your mind about this game. There's other things that I was willing to give you the benefit of the doubt on, until of course you made your point about resource collection and non-combat methods of obtaining upgrades. Some of that, almost every game I know you like has. If that is a strong negative here, then why is it not a strong negative in those games? In reality, what it looks like from my perspective is that you wanted to hate something, so you found every excuse that you could muster in order to do just that. Oh, yeah, you call yourself the king of YouTube and the king of gaming, but the fact of the matter is, all you're doing is something I've seen before, actually. Yeah, it's looking pretty familiar. You present your own opinion as though it's the objective truth, rambling back and forth from point to point with little cohesion, providing nothing to back up your statements other than your own bravado. Oh. That little shit gave me a Margera clone! I'll fucking kill you, you little brat! I don't wanna get over you. And still there's so much that I can do. Hey, alright.
Better run through the jungle. Better run through the jungle. Better run through the jungle. Oh, don't look back.
What the fuck did I tell you about Creedence Clearwater Revival?